After my nephew drained my investment account of $210,000, he showed up at Christmas dinner driving a brand new Range Rover and announced he'd purchased a lakefront cottage in Muskoka. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. He was screaming through tears. "What have you done to me? You've destroyed everything. You won't believe what happened next." Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. This story is about methodical, legal, and absolutely devastating revenge. I sat in the leather chair at my financial advisor's office, staring at the screen showing my investment portfolio balance. Zero. Not reduced, not partially withdrawn, completely emptied. The bank statements lay spread across the mahogany desk like autopsy reports. Every mutual fund, every GIC, every stock holding liquidated between December 2nd and December 6th, 2024, while I was visiting my daughter in Vancouver. "David, I need you to walk me through this again," I said, keeping my voice steady. After 42 years as a civil engineer, I'd learned that panic solved nothing. Facts did. David Park adjusted his glasses, his discomfort obvious. The withdrawals were all authorized through your online access. Correct passwords, correct security questions, transferred to your checking account first, then withdrawn as certified checks. He pulled up the transaction log. 6 separate withdrawals over 5 days. The system flagged nothing because technically you authorized them. Except I didn't. I leaned forward, studying the timestamps. December 2nd, 9:47 a.m. December 3rd, 2:15 p.m. December 4th, 11:23 a.m. All during business hours. All while I was 3 time zones away. "Who has your login credentials?" David asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. 3 people. Myself, my late wife Eleanor, who'd passed 2 years ago, and my nephew Brandon, who I'd given emergency access to after my heart surgery last spring. Just in case something happened. Just in case I needed help. Brandon, 28 years old, my sister's boy, living in the basement apartment of my North York house for the past 18 months because he'd lost his job in tech and needed to get back on his feet. The kid I'd helped raise after his father abandoned the family. The young man I'd mentored, supported, believed in. "I'll need to file a fraud report with the bank," David said carefully. "But I should tell you, internal theft cases are extraordinarily difficult when the perpetrator had authorized access." I drove home from downtown Toronto through freezing rain. The December streets were gray, matching my mood. My retirement savings gone. $210,000 accumulated over 4 decades of work. The money that was supposed to fund my final years, maybe leave something for my daughter and grandchildren. I pulled into my driveway on Shepherd Avenue. Brandon's beat-up Honda Civic sat in its usual spot, rusted and dented. The basement apartment lights were on. I could hear hip-hop music thumping through the walls. I unlocked the main house door and stood in my empty living room. Eleanor's absence hit me again the way it did at unexpected moments. She would have known what to do. She'd always been better at reading people, at sensing when something was wrong. I'd trusted Brandon because Eleanor had loved him like a son. That trust had cost me everything. I called the Toronto Police Service non-emergency line. 2 hours later, Detective Sarah Martinez arrived. Early 40s, sharp eyes, the kind of officer who'd clearly handled enough fraud cases to know how this would play out. She examined my bank statements, took notes on her tablet. "Mr. Patterson, I'll be direct with you. Your nephew had authorized access to these accounts. That makes this a civil matter, not criminal, unless we can prove coercion or identity theft. He stole over $200,000. Legally, he withdrew money from accounts he had permission to access." She set down her tablet. "I've seen cases like this. Family member is given access for emergencies, uses it for personal gain. Banks rarely cooperate because from their perspective, you authorize the access. Courts are backlogged for years. Even if you win a civil judgment, collecting is nearly impossible. Most victims never see a penny. So there's nothing I can do?" I didn't say that. Detective Martinez pulled out her card. "Document everything. Get a lawyer who specializes in civil fraud. And Mr. Patterson, if your nephew has spent this money on assets, cars, property, that changes things. Assets can be seized to satisfy judgments." That night, I didn't confront Brandon. I sat upstairs in the darkness, listening to music from his apartment, planning. Eleanor used to joke that engineering was just problem solving with numbers. This was a problem. I needed to solve it methodically. The next morning, I contacted Rebecca Chen, a litigation attorney recommended by David. Mid-30s, former prosecutor, reputation for aggressive civil recovery cases. She met me at her downtown office the following day. "Mr. Patterson, I've reviewed your documentation. Your nephew had legal access, which complicates criminal prosecution, but civilly, we can absolutely pursue this. The key is proving he used your money without permission for personal gain. Do you know what he purchased? Not yet. Find out. If he bought a car, property, investments, we can trace your money through bank records. Once we establish the paper trail, we file for summary judgment based on unjust enrichment and breach of fiduciary duty. What are my chances? With this documentation, 80% we win judgment. Collection is the hard part. Unless he has assets we can seize, I hired Rebecca that afternoon, $20,000 retainer, the last of my liquid savings, but worth it if there was any chance of recovery. I spent the next week pretending nothing was wrong. Brandon came and went from the basement apartment, oblivious. I watched him through my kitchen window. New designer jacket, new boots, confident swagger, the look of someone who believed he'd gotten away with something. December 20th, Brandon announced he'd be gone for Christmas, visiting friends in Muskoka. He didn't specify where. On December 23rd, Rebecca called. "Mr. Patterson, we've traced the funds. Your nephew withdrew the money as certified checks made payable to himself. He deposited them into a personal account at TD Bank. From there, we have wire transfers. $115,000 to Lexus Financial for a vehicle purchase. $75,000 as a down payment to a realtor in Muskoka. The remaining $20,000 spent on furniture, electronics, and various retail purchases. He bought a car and a cottage. With my money, a 2024 Range Rover Sport and a lakefront property in Port Sydney, Muskoka, both titled in his name. Can we seize them? Once we have judgment, absolutely. But Mr. Patterson, this gets better. He took out a mortgage on the cottage for $275,000. That means he has equity we can claim." Christmas Day arrived. I spent it alone in my empty house, Eleanor's absence more pronounced during holidays. My daughter Sophie had invited me to Vancouver, but I declined. I needed to be here, needed to see this through. At 6 p.m., my doorbell rang. Brandon stood on the porch, grinning, holding a bottle of wine. Behind him in the driveway sat a gleaming black Range Rover, dealer tags still visible. "Merry Christmas, Uncle Lawrence." I brought wine. "Thought we could celebrate together since you're alone this year." I let him in, maintaining my composure. Engineering discipline. Never show your hand until you're ready to play it. We sat in my living room, the same room where Eleanor and I had hosted countless family gatherings. Brandon talked excitedly about his new life. "Uncle Lawrence, I've got incredible news. I finally turned things around. Got a consulting gig that paid out huge, and I invested it wisely. Bought a cottage up in Muskoka, right on Lake Muskoka. 3 bedrooms, private dock, incredible views. And the Range Rover. I've wanted one since I was a kid. How wonderful for you." His enthusiasm was nauseating. The casual lies, the performance of success built entirely on my stolen money. "You should come up sometime. See the place. Maybe next summer when the weather's nice. I'd love that." After Brandon left, I sat in the darkness for hours. The rage I'd been suppressing for weeks finally surfaced. Not hot anger, but cold calculation. He'd stolen my retirement, betrayed my trust, lied to my face, and expected me to celebrate his success. On December 27th, Rebecca filed the civil suit in Toronto Superior Court. Lawrence Patterson versus Brandon Matthews. Causes of action: unjust enrichment, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, fraud. Damages sought: $210,000 plus interest, legal fees, and punitive damages. Brandon was served at my house on December 29th. The process server found him in the basement apartment. I watched from my upstairs window as Brandon read the documents, his face transforming from confusion to panic. He came upstairs 10 minutes later, papers in hand. "Uncle Lawrence, what is this?" "A lawsuit. This says I stole money from you." "That's insane." "Did you?" "What? No. I don't understand." "Brandon, I know you accessed my investment accounts in early December. I know you withdrew $210,000. I know you used that money to buy a Range Rover and a cottage in Muskoka." His face went pale. I can explain." "Please do." "I was going to pay you back. I saw an investment opportunity, and I knew you'd say no if I asked, so I borrowed it. I was going to replace it before you even noticed. You stole my retirement savings. It was a loan. A loan requires permission. This was theft. Uncle Lawrence, please. I'm family. We can work this out. Eleanor and I took you in when your father left. We fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, gave you a place to live rent-free, and you repaid that by stealing everything I had. It was a mistake. I'll return the money. You can't. You've already spent it. I'll sell the cottage, the car. I'll make this right. You'll sell them because the court will order it." The lawsuit proceeds. Brandon hired a lawyer, some young associate from a small firm who clearly realized he was defending the indefensible. Their strategy was to argue that I'd given Brandon implicit permission to manage my finances, that the withdrawals were authorized, that this was a family dispute, not a legal matter. Rebecca tore them apart in discovery. Bank records showing Brandon's account received the exact amounts withdrawn from mine. Purchase agreements for the Range Rover and cottage matching those amounts. My testimony that I'd only given Brandon emergency access, never permission to withdraw funds. David Park's testimony that my accounts showed no prior history of large withdrawals or transfers. The paper trail was irrefutable. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, the court issued summary judgment. The judge's ruling was scathing. The defendant brazenly abused a position of trust to misappropriate substantial funds from the plaintiff, his uncle, who had provided him housing and support. The defendant's claims of implicit authorization are contradicted by every piece of evidence. This was not a loan, not a misunderstanding, but calculated theft from a vulnerable elderly person. Judgment for the plaintiff: $210,000 plus interest from the date of theft at 5% annually. Legal fees of $32,000. Total judgment, $247,800. Further, the court finds the defendant's conduct meets the threshold for punitive damages. An additional $20,000 awarded to deter similar conduct. Final judgment, $267,800. Brandon's lawyer attempted to appeal. The appeal was denied within 3 weeks. Now came collection. Rebecca filed immediate liens on the Range Rover and the Muskoka cottage. She also filed for wage garnishment, though Brandon claimed he had no income. The cottage, purchased for $350,000 with $75,000 down and a $275,000 mortgage, was now encumbered by our judgment. Brandon couldn't sell without satisfying the lien. He couldn't refinance because no lender would approve a loan against a property with a court judgment. He was trapped. In March, Brandon's lawyer sent a settlement offer. Client proposes to sell the cottage and vehicle. Net proceeds after mortgage and car loan satisfaction to be split equally between plaintiff and defendant. Rebecca showed me the letter in her office. What do you think? I think he wants to keep half of my money after stealing all of it. Counter offer. Full net proceeds to satisfy judgment, or we force foreclosure and auction. We countered exactly that. Brandon's lawyer responded with increasingly desperate offers. 60-40 split. 70-30 split. Payment plan over 10 years. Rebecca rejected them all. The judgment was final. Brandon owed the full amount, and we would collect every possible penny. In April, we filed for judicial sale of the cottage. The court ordered it sold at public auction, with proceeds applied to the judgment. Brandon tried to sell it privately first, hoping to get market value, but no buyer would touch a property with an active judgment lien. The auction was scheduled for May 15th. Meanwhile, the Range Rover sat in my driveway, seized by the sheriff and held pending sale. Brandon had been forced to move out of my basement apartment. The court judgment made our relationship untenable. He moved back in with my sister Linda in Scarborough. Linda called me once, crying. "Lawrence, he's your nephew. How can you do this to family? How could he steal from me?" It was a mistake. He's young. He's 28, not 18. And it wasn't a mistake. It was calculated theft over 5 days. You're going to destroy his life over money. He destroyed his own life when he chose to steal mine. She hung up on me. I didn't hear from her again. The cottage auction took place on a sunny May morning in Bracebridge. Court ordered sale. Minimum bid set at $320,000 to cover the outstanding mortgage plus costs. I drove up to Muskoka the night before, checked into a bed and breakfast, prepared for the auction. Rebecca met me there, reviewing strategy. The property will likely sell above minimum. Current market value is around $380,000 to $400,000. After the mortgage is paid, we should see net proceeds of $100,000 to $125,000 applied to your judgment. And if Brandon bids to keep it, he can't. He has no financing, no cash. He's trapped. The auction room was crowded. About 30 potential bidders, mostly investors and cottage hunters. Brandon sat in the back with his lawyer, looking defeated. He'd aged visibly in 5 months. Thinner, dark circles under his eyes, the confidence completely gone. The auctioneer began. Lakefront cottage in Port Sydney, 3 bedrooms, private dock, sold as is where is. Opening bid $320,000. Paddle raised immediately. $330,000. $340,000. The bidding climbed steadily. $350,000. $360,000. I raised my paddle. Brandon, sitting with his lawyer, turned and saw me. His face went white. The auctioneer called for further bids. Silence. Sold to bidder 73 for $360,000. I'd bought the cottage. The place Brandon purchased with my stolen money at a $25,000 discount from market value. After court fees and the outstanding mortgage Brandon had taken, the net proceeds were $187,000 applied to the judgment. He still owed me $80,800. The Range Rover went next. Seized and sold at auction for $79,000. After paying off Brandon's loan, the net was $7,000. Judgment balance, $73,800. Rebecca filed for wage garnishment, but Brandon had no wages, no job. Living with his mother in Scarborough, my sister refusing to take my calls. On June 30th, Brandon filed for bankruptcy. Personal bankruptcy. Trusteavsignet. All assets liquidated, debts discharged, except judgments for fraud aren't dischargeable in bankruptcy. Rebecca explained this to me. The fraud finding means he'll owe you this money for the rest of his life. Every job he gets, we can garnish wages. Every asset he acquires, we can seize. He'll never be free of it. I sat in the Muskoka cottage in July. My cottage now, the place Eleanor and I had dreamed of. The dock stretched out into the lake, water lapping gently. Sunset painted the sky orange and pink. I'd recovered $194,000 of my $210,000. Lost $16,000 to the process plus the legal fees, but I had the cottage worth more than what I'd lost. More importantly, Brandon had nothing. Bankrupt at 28, credit destroyed, relationship destroyed, living in his mother's basement again, working part-time at a warehouse for minimum wage, which we garnished 25% of. My sister called once in August, screaming at me. You destroyed my son's life over money. You're his uncle. Family is supposed to forgive. Tell your son that stealing has consequences. He made a mistake. He's young. He's 28, not 18. And it wasn't a mistake. It was calculated theft. You're a monster. I hung up, blocked her number. Sophie visited in September with my grandchildren. We spent a week at the cottage, swimming, fishing, building campfires. Emma asked about Brandon once. Is he still in trouble? Yes, sweetheart. He made some very bad choices. Will he say sorry? I don't know. He never did. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. I sold my North York house in October, moved to the cottage full-time. The Muskoka community welcomed me. Neighbors who didn't know the story just knew I was Lawrence, the retired engineer who liked morning walks and afternoon fishing. On Christmas Eve, I stood on the dock watching snow fall onto the frozen lake. 1 year since Brandon had stolen everything. 1 year since this all began. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Uncle Lawrence, it's Brandon. I know you blocked me. I just want to say I'm sorry. I was selfish and stupid. I destroyed our relationship for money. I think about it every day. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Merry Christmas. I read it twice. Stood in the falling snow, breath visible in the December air. Then I deleted it. Didn't respond. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't give back the year of stress, the betrayal, the shattered trust. Sorry was just a word. I went inside, lit a fire, poured a glass of the scotch Sophie had given me, sat in the chair facing the lake, watching the flames. Justice hadn't brought joy, just closure. Just the cold satisfaction of knowing that actions have consequences, that theft doesn't pay, that even family isn't immune to accountability. Eleanor's photo sat on the mantel smiling. Forever 58. I raised my glass to her. We got our cottage, love. Not the way we planned, but we got it. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the dock in white. It was finished. To anyone out there who might face something similar, let me tell you what I learned. Document everything from the first moment you suspect financial abuse. Every transaction, every conversation, every detail matters in court. Get a lawyer who specializes in civil fraud recovery, not just general practice. This requires specific expertise in asset tracing and judgment enforcement. Act quickly. The longer you wait, the easier it is for thieves to hide or spend stolen funds. Speed is critical. Don't let family pressure stop you from pursuing justice. Theft is theft, regardless of DNA. Blood relation doesn't grant immunity from consequences. Understand that civil recovery is a long game. My case took 7 months from theft to final collection. Many take years. But if the thief has assets, persistence pays off. Know that judgment in your favor doesn't automatically mean you'll collect. But judgments for fraud follow the defendant forever. They can't be discharged in bankruptcy. They never expire. As long as the debtor has income or assets, you can collect. Except that some relationships will never recover. My sister and I haven't spoken in over a year. Brandon and I will never have a relationship again. That's the cost of justice, and it's worth paying. Most importantly, never give anyone unrestricted access to your finances, even family you trust. Emergency access should have limits, notifications, safeguards. Trust, but verify. I'm 69 now, living in the cottage Eleanor and I dreamed of. The irony isn't lost on me that Brandon's theft ultimately gave me what I wanted, just through a path of betrayal and legal warfare instead of peaceful retirement planning. Every morning I walk the dock and watch the sunrise over Lake Muskoka. The water is peaceful, the air clean, the community welcoming. I've made new friends here, people who know me as Lawrence the engineer, not Lawrence the theft victim. The grandchildren visit regularly. Emma and her brother Jack love the cottage, the swimming, the fishing, the campfires. They're building memories here, good memories untainted by the ugliness of how we acquired this place. Sophie understands what I did and why. She supported every decision, every legal action. She watched Brandon steal from her father and saw him face consequences. That's a lesson worth teaching, even through pain. The $73,000 Brandon still owes me accrues interest at 5% annually. As of today, the total judgment is over $80,000. Every month, we garnish his minimum wage paychecks, 25% of his income, roughly $280 per month. At that rate, it will take him 24 years to pay off the judgment. He'll be 52 years old. Brandon tried to flee to Alberta last spring, hoping to escape the judgment. Rebecca filed the judgment in Alberta courts within a week. Wage garnishment followed him. There's no escape from a fraud judgment in Canada. It follows you, province to province, attached to your social insurance number, flagged in credit reports, visible to every employer, every landlord, every financial institution. He wanted a fresh start by stealing from me. Instead, he's marked for life. Some people might call me vindictive. My sister certainly does. She sent me one final letter in March, handwritten, delivered by mail since I'd blocked all other communication. Lawrence, you've become a bitter old man who destroyed his nephew over money. Eleanor would be ashamed of what you've done. You chose money over family, revenge over forgiveness, punishment over mercy. I hope you're happy alone in that cottage. surrounded by everything you value more than your own blood. I burned the letter in the fireplace. Eleanor wouldn't be ashamed. She'd be proud that I stood up for myself, that I refused to be a victim, that I held a thief accountable regardless of family ties. Eleanor believed in consequences. She believed that love without accountability isn't love at all, just enabling. She'd have pursued Brandon just as aggressively as I did. The cottage is worth about $420,000 now. Real estate in Muskoka has appreciated significantly. Between the cottage value, the recovered funds, and the ongoing garnishment, I've actually come out ahead financially. But that was never the point. The point was justice. The point was proving that theft has consequences. The point was showing that family doesn't grant immunity from accountability. I sleep well at night. No guilt, no regrets. Just the peace that comes from knowing I did what was necessary, what was right, what any person should do when violated by someone they trusted. Brandon made his choice on December 2nd when he logged into my investment accounts. He made it again on December 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th when he continued withdrawing funds he knew weren't his. He made it on Christmas Day when he sat in my living room and lied to my face about his success. Every choice was his. Every consequence is his. I'm just the person who made sure those consequences arrived. The cottage has become my sanctuary, the place where I rebuilt my life after theft and betrayal tried to destroy it. I wake up to sunrises over the lake. I spend afternoons reading on the dock. I host my daughter and grandchildren for weeks at a time. I've joined the local community association, the fishing club, the volunteer fire department. This isn't just a cottage anymore. It's home. It's proof that justice can prevail. It's evidence that even in your late 60s, even after devastating loss, you can fight back and win. Eleanor's ashes are scattered in the lake, her favorite place. I talk to her sometimes when I'm alone on the dock. Tell her about the grandchildren, about the cottage improvements, about the life we're living in the place we dreamed of. I don't tell her about Brandon anymore. He's not worth the breath. He's a closed chapter, a problem solved, a thief held accountable. The garnishment continues automatically. I don't have to think about it, don't have to do anything. The system I set in motion keeps running, keeps collecting, keeps reminding Brandon every payday that theft doesn't pay. In another 23 years, when he's 52 and I'm 92, the judgment might be satisfied. Or I'll be dead and the judgment will transfer to my estate, continuing to haunt him until he's old himself. Either way, justice was served. Last week, I received notification that Brandon tried to settle the judgment again, offered $10,000 cash for full satisfaction and release, probably scraped together from family loans or credit card advances. Rebecca sent our standard response. Full judgment plus interest, or garnishment continues. He withdrew the offer. Some people ask if I ever feel bad for him, if I ever regret destroying his financial life. The answer is simple. No. Brandon destroyed his own financial life when he stole from me. I just made sure he faced the consequences of that choice. He could have asked me for money. I might have said no, but he could have asked. He could have gotten a job, saved money, built his life honestly. Instead, he chose theft. He chose betrayal. He chose to believe he could steal from family and face no consequences. He was wrong. The snow is falling again tonight, Christmas Eve, 2 years after this began. I'm sitting by the fire with a glass of scotch, Eleanor's photo on the mantel, peace in my heart. Tomorrow, Sophie and the grandchildren arrive for the holidays. We'll open presents, cook dinner, tell stories, build snowmen, go ice fishing. We'll make memories in this cottage, this beautiful place that came to me through ugliness but remains beautiful nonetheless. Brandon will spend Christmas in his mother's basement, working a minimum wage job, watching 25% of every paycheck disappear to garnishment, carrying a debt that will haunt him for decades. That's justice. That's consequences. That's what happens when you steal from family and believe you'll get away with it. I raise my glass to Eleanor's photo. We got our cottage, my love. We got justice. We got peace. The fire crackles. The snow falls. The lake freezes slowly. And I sleep soundly, knowing that in this world, at least sometimes, the good guys win. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced financial betrayal from family? How did you handle it? Let me know your stories. Justice isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. Thank you for listening.